The sound of shattering glass pierced the air as the cake table toppled. Blue frosting splattered across the concrete patio like a Rorschach test. Brightly wrapped presents flew in all directions, scattering amid the chaos of armored officers storming through the backyard gate. Children's screams competed with the mechanical shouting, blaring through megaphones. "Police everybody down now." Marcus Jefferson, just turned 8 years old and dressed in his cherished Spider-Man costume, stood frozen as his birthday celebration transformed into a scene of terror. His mother lunged toward him, desperation etched across her face, before being roughly shoved to the ground by an officer in tactical gear. Just 2 hours earlier, Shanice and DeAndre Jefferson had been putting the final touches on what promised to be the perfect superhero-themed birthday party for their son. Their modest, but well-kept home in the Oakwood Heights subdivision had been transformed into a celebration of all things Marvel and DC. Colorful streamers in primary colors hung from every corner of their backyard. A handmade banner reading, "Happy 8th Birthday, Super Marcus," stretched across the fence. DeAndre, still in his postal worker uniform after finishing his Saturday half shift, carefully arranged superhero masks on a table for each child guest. "You think we went overboard?" Shanice asked, adjusting the Spider-Man tablecloth that kept catching the May breeze. She wore a Wonder Woman t-shirt that matched the theme, her braids tied back with a red ribbon. "For our boy, never," DeAndre replied, his smile revealing the pride he took in creating this day for his son. After last year's COVID birthday with just us three, he deserves something special. Shanice glanced toward their new fence, the one they'd installed last fall after moving into the predominantly white neighborhood. It had been a significant investment, but it provided a sense of privacy from neighbors who hadn't exactly rolled out the welcome wagon, particularly from the Thompson house, where Patricia Thompson, whom neighborhood kids had taken to calling Karen behind her back, seemed to find something new to complain about weekly, from the volume of Marcus's basketball bouncing to the exotic cooking smells that apparently offended her delicate sensibilities. "Did you see Thompson peeking through her blinds again this morning?" DeAndre asked, his voice lowering despite the privacy fence. "I swear that woman has nothing better to do than monitor our every move." "Let's not let her ruin today," Shanice said firmly, though she unconsciously glanced toward the Thompson house. "This is Marcus's day. 8 years old. Can you believe it?" Marcus burst through the back door at that moment, cape flowing behind his Spider-Man costume. "Mom, Dad, Joey's mom just texted. They're 5 minutes away. Is everything ready? Did you hide the goodie bags? Are the water guns filled?" His excitement was contagious, momentarily washing away his parents' concerns. Within the hour, the Jefferson backyard had transformed into a hive of activity. 8 second graders darted between activities, their superhero capes fluttering behind them. Marcus's best friends Joey, Lamar, and Tyler engaged in an enthusiastic water gun battle, while 2 classmates, Emma and Zoe, concentrated on the superhero mask decoration station Shanice had prepared. 3 other boys from Marcus's class huddled around the superhero training course that DeAndre had constructed from hula hoops, pool noodles, and some ingeniously repurposed cardboard boxes. The parents who had stayed chatted amicably by the refreshment table. DeAndre was explaining his job at the post office to Joey's father, a software engineer who had recently relocated from California. 15 years next month, DeAndre said with pride. "Started sorting mail and worked my way up to route manager for the Western District." Shanice was in the middle of describing her work as a pediatric nurse to Emma's mother when she noticed movement at their neighbor's window. Patricia Thompson stood plainly visible now, phone pressed to her ear, staring directly at their gathering with unmistakable displeasure. Something in the woman's posture rigid, judgmental, determined, sent a chill through Shanice, despite the warm spring afternoon. Everything okay? Emma's mother asked, following Shanice's gaze. Yes, just, Shanice began, but was interrupted by Marcus racing up with Lamar in tow. Mom, when can we do cake? Lamar says he's never seen a Spider-Man cake with actual web shooters before. Shanice forced herself to refocus on her son's joy. 20 more minutes of play, then cake and presents. Deal. Patricia Thompson hung up her phone and disappeared from the window. Shanice tried to dismiss the uneasiness settling in her stomach as she rejoined the party. She didn't know that Patricia had just made a call that would shatter their lives. In the Oakwood Heights Police Department Dispatch Center, Officer Jenny Ramirez was just starting her shift when the call came through. The woman on the line spoke with urgent conviction. This is Patricia Thompson at 487 Oakwood Circle. There's a large gathering of gang members in the yard behind mine. I can see at least 10 men, possibly armed. They're wearing colors and masks. I believe they're planning something dangerous. There are loud noises that sound like they might be firecrackers or worse. Ma'am, can you describe what you're seeing in more detail? Officer Ramirez asked, already typing the information into the system. They moved in 6 months ago, and there's been suspicious activity ever since. Different cars coming at all hours. Today there's a large group gathered. They have some kind of banner displayed. It might be gang insignia. I've seen them running around with what look like weapons. I'm concerned for my safety and the neighborhood's. Are you currently in danger, ma'am? Not yet, but who knows what they're planning. Please send someone immediately. This is a peaceful neighborhood. We can't have this kind of element here. Within minutes, what had been logged as a possible gang gathering with weapons in a residential area triggered the dispatch of 2 patrol cars. When those officers arrived near the Jefferson home and reported hearing children's screams, actually delighted shrieks from the water gun battle, along with individuals in masks visible through the fence gaps. The situation escalated. The shift commander, working with incomplete and biased information, made the call to deploy the department's recently formed tactical response unit. And so it happened that at 3:47 p.m., as Shanice was placing candles on Marcus's Spider-Man cake, and DeAndre was readying his camera to capture the moment, armored vehicles silently surrounded their home. Neighbors emerged onto their porches, witnessing officers in tactical gear positioning themselves around the perimeter of the Jefferson property. The first warning came as a disembodied voice blasting through a megaphone. Attention residents, this is the police. Everyone inside the yard, come out with your hands up. The children froze in confusion. One of the girls started crying immediately. Shanice and DeAndre exchanged a look of bewilderment that quickly transformed to terror. What's happening? Joey's father asked, instinctively moving toward his son. Before anyone could respond, the back gate burst open. 6 officers in full tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised. On the ground, everybody down now. The command hit them like a physical force. DeAndre immediately raised his hands. This is a children's birthday party. These are kids. An officer roughly shoved him down. I said on the ground. Chaos erupted. Children screamed in genuine terror now. Shanice lunged toward Marcus, but was intercepted by an officer who forced her to the ground. The cake table toppled in the commotion, sending the carefully crafted Spider-Man cake crashing to the concrete. A child slipped in the frosting and fell, adding to the cacophony of crying. What is the meaning of this? Shouted Joey's father, only to find himself face down on the ground with a knee in his back. Marcus stood paralyzed in his Spider-Man costume, tears streaming down his face, watching his special day disintegrate around him. An officer approached him. seeming momentarily confused by the small costumed figure. "He's my son. He's 8 years old. It's his birthday." Shanice screamed from her position on the ground, her cheek pressed against the concrete. "Please don't hurt him." The tactical team continued securing the area, separating adults from children. One officer picked up a water gun, examining it with visible confusion. Another grabbed the superhero banner, apparently looking for gang symbols in the bright comic book lettering. From her kitchen window, Patricia Thompson watched the scene unfold, her hand covering her mouth. Perhaps even she hadn't expected this level of response, but she didn't come outside to clarify the situation. The team leader, Sergeant Reynolds, was beginning to look uncertain as he surveyed the scene: costumed children in tears, spilled cake, birthday presents scattered across the lawn. "Search the house," he ordered 2 officers, his voice slightly less confident now. "You have no right," DeAndre protested from the ground. "Where's your warrant?" "Exigent circumstances," replied the sergeant automatically, though his eyes lingered on the Spider-Man decorations with growing doubt. As officers disappeared into the house, neighbors began gathering along the street, filming with their phones. Marcus, still frozen in shock, finally broke into heart-wrenching sobs when an officer picked up his birthday present from his grandmother, a prized Captain America shield, and tossed it aside after inspection. "Mom," he cried, his voice small and broken, "why are they ruining my party?" The question hung in the air, impossible for Shanice to answer, with her face still pressed against the ground. 15 excruciating minutes passed before the house search concluded, and the team leader received confirmation through his radio that there were no weapons, drugs, or any evidence of criminal activity found. Just children's bedrooms, family photos, and birthday preparations. The tactical team's confusion was now evident. One by one, they lowered their weapons. Parents were allowed to collect their terrified children, who huddled together crying. Sergeant Reynolds approached DeAndre, who was now standing with his arm protectively around Shanice and Marcus. "Sir, we received a report of armed gang activity at this address," he explained, his tone significantly moderated. "Gang activity," DeAndre repeated incredulously. "At my 8-year-old son's birthday party." The report mentioned individuals in masks, with weapons and suspicious banners. Reynolds continued, gesturing awkwardly toward the superhero decorations and water guns. Shanice's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "Patricia Thompson," she said, her voice tight with anger. "She called this in, didn't she?" The sergeant didn't confirm or deny, but his momentary glance toward the Thompson residence was answer enough. "These are second graders," Shanice said, her voice rising. "These suspicious individuals are 7- and 8-year-old children. The masks are superhero costumes for my son's birthday theme. The weapons are plastic water guns that we filled ourselves this morning." By now, several parents had begun vehemently demanding badge numbers and names. Joey's father, who had mentioned earlier that he was an attorney, was already on his phone, his expression thunderous as he documented the scene. "We were responding to information provided by a concerned citizen," Sergeant Reynolds said defensively. "We have to take all reports seriously." "A concerned racist citizen," corrected Emma's mother sharply. "Let's call it what it is." As the police began their awkward withdrawal, the full impact of what had happened began to sink in. Marcus's birthday party was destroyed physically and emotionally. Children who should have gone home with goodie bags and happy memories would instead leave with trauma. The Jeffersons' yard, so carefully prepared for celebration, now resembled a disaster zone. Later that evening, after the last guest had departed, and Marcus had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep, clutching his salvaged Captain America shield, Shanice and DeAndre sat in their kitchen in stunned silence. "I keep thinking about what could have happened," DeAndre said finally, his voice hollow. "If someone had moved too quickly, if I had reacted differently." Shanice reached for his hand. "But everyone's safe. That's what matters most." "Is it? Though?" DeAndre's eyes met hers. "Our son just learned a lesson no 8-year-old should have to learn. That in some people's eyes, a group of black people celebrating can only be something dangerous." Shanice's phone buzzed with a notification. Joey's father had texted, "Video from today is already at 50,000 views. News stations calling. This isn't over." Indeed, it wasn't over. A neighbor across the street had captured the entire raid on video, from the moment the tactical team surrounded the house to the image of crying children in superhero costumes being held at gunpoint. By midnight, the footage had gone viral, accompanied by the hashtag #JoshBirthday, while black. The next morning, as Marcus quietly picked at his breakfast, refusing to wear his once-beloved Spider-Man pajamas, the Jeffersons' doorbell rang. It was a local news crew requesting an interview. Before DeAndre could politely decline, he noticed something unexpected. Their neighbors were gathering on the sidewalk in front of their house. Not just one or two, but dozens. Emma's parents were there with signs reading, "Birthdays are not crimes," and "Justice for Marcus." The elderly couple from 2 doors down, who had never spoken to them before, stood solemnly holding a wrapped present. Joey and his parents had set up a table and were unloading boxes that appeared to contain party supplies. "What's happening?" Shanice asked, joining DeAndre at the door. Joey's father stepped forward. "We thought Marcus deserved a proper birthday celebration, one without police intervention." He gestured to the gathering crowd. "Turns out, most of your neighbors agree." As the Jeffersons stood speechless, a patrol car pulled up. Officer Jenny Ramirez, who had taken the initial call, emerged looking solemn. "Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson, I'm here officially to inform you that the department is conducting a full investigation into yesterday's incident," she stated formally, before lowering her voice. "And unofficially, to tell you, I've preserved the original 911 call recording before anyone can lose it." The community's response continued to grow throughout the day. The mayor issued a statement promising a thorough investigation. The police chief held a press conference acknowledging significant concerns about the response protocols followed. Social media exploded with support for the Jefferson family and outrage at Patricia Thompson, whose name and actions had become public through neighbor accounts. By Tuesday morning, 3 days after the raid, the story had reached national news. Marcus, still subdued, but beginning to process what happened with the help of his parents' careful explanations, was surprised to receive video messages from several actual Marvel actors, expressing their support and promising a real superhero experience once things settled down. The community meeting held that Wednesday evening at Oakwood Heights Elementary School was standing room only. The Jeffersons arrived to thunderous applause. The police chief, looking uncomfortable under the harsh fluorescent lights, offered an official apology. "Our department failed in its duty to properly assess the situation before responding with force," he admitted. "New protocols are being implemented immediately, including verification requirements for anonymous tips and mandatory training on bias recognition for all officers." When it was DeAndre's turn to speak, the room fell silent. He stood, straightened his shoulders, and addressed his neighbors. 3 months ago, when we moved to this community, we were looking for a safe place to raise our son. A place where he could play outside, where the schools were good, where we could build a future together. He paused, his emotion visible. Last Saturday, our son learned that some people will see him as a threat no matter what he's doing, even celebrating his birthday dressed as his favorite superhero. Shanice joined him, adding her perspective as both a mother and healthcare worker. I've spent my career helping children heal. Now I have to help my own child recover from trauma inflicted by those meant to protect him. This isn't just about one birthday party or one false report. It's about the assumptions that led police to believe that a children's party in our yard must be gang activity. Patricia Thompson was notably absent from the meeting. Earlier that day, she had been formally charged with filing a false police report, with additional charges being considered under hate crime statutes. Her house stood empty, a for sale sign hastily erected in the front yard. By the 2-week mark after the incident, the Jeffersons had become reluctant symbols in a broader conversation about racial profiling and police response tactics. They had appeared on morning news programs and been contacted by civil rights organizations offering legal support for the lawsuit they were now pursuing against both the police department and Patricia Thompson personally. But it was the community's continued support that most affected the family. The weekend after the incident, neighbors organized a do-over birthday party for Marcus at the community center. Over 60 children attended, all in superhero costumes, along with their parents. The police chief came as well, not in uniform, but wearing an Iron Man t-shirt, bringing his own children to participate. Marcus, initially hesitant and still jumping at sudden noises, gradually relaxed as he was surrounded by friends and supporters. When the time came to cut the new Spider-Man cake even more elaborate than the original, he actually smiled. "Make a wish, sweetie," Shanice encouraged as he prepared to blow out the candles. Marcus closed his eyes for a long moment. "I wish this never happens to any other kid," he whispered before blowing out all 8 candles in one determined breath. The settlement came 3 months later. The city agreed to pay substantial damages to the Jefferson family and to implement comprehensive changes to police protocols for responding to calls involving minors. Patricia Thompson, facing both criminal charges and a civil lawsuit, agreed to a separate settlement that included mandatory community service and anti-bias training. More meaningful to the Jeffersons was the creation of the Marcus Jefferson Community Safety Initiative, funded by their settlement and dedicated to building better relationships between law enforcement and minority communities. The program would include regular events bringing police officers and local children together in positive settings, bias training for dispatchers handling 911 calls, and community oversight of police response protocols. "It's not enough to punish what went wrong," DeAndre explained at the program's launch event. "We have to build something better in its place." 6 months after the raid, the Jeffersons had a decision to make. The trauma of that day still lingered. Marcus still had occasional nightmares, and Shanice admitted to feeling anxious whenever police cars passed their home. They had received offers to relocate, generous ones that would have allowed them to move to any neighborhood they chose. "What do you think?" DeAndre asked Shanice late one night after Marcus was asleep. "Should we start fresh somewhere else?" Shanice was quiet for a long moment. "I've been thinking about something my grandmother used to say, that sometimes you need to stay and change things rather than leave and protect yourself." She looked out their window at the neighborhood that had rallied around them. "If we leave, we send a message that what happened here can chase us away. If we stay, we show Marcus that one person's hatred doesn't define a community." The next morning, as if their decision had somehow been communicated to the universe, the doorbell rang. It was Emma and her mother, bearing a handmade invitation. "We're having a block party next weekend," Emma explained excitedly. "Everyone's coming. We're going to have a bouncy castle and face painting and everything." Her mother added more softly, "The neighbors thought it was important to reclaim our community spaces for celebration, to show that's what our neighborhood stands for." She hesitated. "We'd really love for Marcus to be there. All of you. Of course." Shanice looked to her son, letting this be his decision. Marcus considered the invitation carefully before asking, "Can I wear my Spider-Man costume?" "Of course you can," Emma replied. "I'm going to be Wonder Woman." As they watched the children immediately launch into superhero poses, DeAndre slipped his arm around Shanice's waist. "I think we have our answer about staying," he murmured. The block party the following weekend was everything a community celebration should be. Tables lined the street, filled with potluck dishes, reflecting the diverse backgrounds of the residents. Children raced between activities, their laughter filling the air. And in the center of it all was Marcus, Spider-Man mask pushed back on his head, demonstrating his web shooter moves to an appreciative audience of neighborhood kids. Officer Ramirez attended in uniform, along with several other officers who had volunteered to serve ice cream and participate in the dunk tank, allowing giggling children the satisfaction of sending them splashing into the water. It wasn't a perfect resolution to all the complex issues raised by what had happened, but it was an authentic beginning. As twilight descended and neighbors gathered for an outdoor movie projected against the side of a garage, DeAndre found himself seated next to the elderly neighbor who had been among the first to show support after the incident. "You know," the man said quietly, "I've lived in this neighborhood for 42 years. Seen a lot of changes. Not all of them good. But what happened after that terrible day at your house, the way people came together, that's the most hopeful thing I've seen in decades." On screen, a superhero was saving the day to triumphant music. In real life, the work of healing and change continued more quietly, but no less powerfully. Marcus, seated between his parents with a bowl of popcorn on his lap, reached for both their hands as the movie reached its climactic scene. "The best superpower isn't flying or super strength," he whispered to his mother. "It's making bad things turn into good things." Shanice squeezed his hand, her throat tight with emotion. Across the gathering, she caught the eye of Joey's father, who raised his glass in a subtle toast. The attorney had just that morning informed them that their case was becoming the foundation for new legislation addressing racially motivated 911 calls. The Jefferson story wouldn't end with one community block party, or even with new laws named in their honor. The real work of ensuring that no other child would have their birthday party stormed by armed officers because of their skin color would continue for years. But looking around at the diverse gathering of neighbors all focused on the simple joy of a summer evening movie, DeAndre felt something he hadn't expected to feel again, so soon after the trauma they'd experienced hope. As the movie ended and neighbors began packing up chairs and collecting sleepy children, Marcus turned to his parents. "I think my birthday wish is coming true," he said, slowly. DeAndre ruffled his son's hair. "That's usually how real wishes come true, buddy. Not all at once with magic, but slowly, with people working together day after day." The Jefferson family walked home hand in hand under a sky full of stars, their path lit by porch lights, left on by neighbors in a silent gesture of solidarity. The trauma of that May afternoon wouldn't disappear overnight, but neither would the strength they'd discovered within themselves and their community. For every Patricia Thompson in the world, they had found a dozen neighbors willing to stand beside them. For every moment of injustice, they were helping create new possibilities for change. That night, for the first time since the incident, Marcus slept soundly, without nightmares. His Spider-Man costume hanging ready in his closet for tomorrow's adventures. And, in the kitchen below, Shanice and DeAndre spoke quietly about their plans for the next Community Safety Initiative meeting, where officers and residents would continue the difficult but essential work of building trust. It wasn't the life they had imagined when they moved to Oakwood Heights, but it was a life with purpose, a story still being written, not just for themselves, but for every family that deserved to celebrate birthdays without fear.